Good afternoon everybody, thanks very much for coming. I'm Gerry Grant from Converged Communication Solutions, and I'm here today to talk to you through from dodgy disks all the way through to crypto mining. So brief agenda of what we're going to cover today. Probably won't go in this order, but we're going to have a brief history, talk about things that the attackers used to do and hackers used to do a long time ago. We'll have a look at key trends and observations of things that we're seeing just now. Talk about why the tactics of the bad actors are changing, why are they doing different things, some lessons we might be able to learn from previous big attacks, how we can protect ourselves as well, which is really important. Stephen Hawking said it best when he said intelligence is the ability to adapt to change, and that's what we need to do as defenders when we're trying to defend our networks and we're trying to defend our computer systems. We need to adapt and we need to change as well. Back in the day, if you go all the way back to sort of the 1960s, hacking and breaking into computer systems was all about showing people how smart they were, how intelligent they were, look how good I am at doing things. And hacking goes all the way back to the 1960s, when the MIT developed a game called Space Wars. People would try and break into the source code and change it so they could give themselves good high scores, maybe make the game a little bit more difficult for their friends. And as computers began to become more connected, people were trying to break into systems that didn't belong to them, typically just to try and crash the system and again to prove that they didn't do it. So one of the first defences that they came up with was a little command line program called crash. So when you logged into a computer, it came up and said, these are all the commands that you can run, and this is crash. If you type that in, it will break all the computers will reboot. Please don't do that, somebody might lose all their work. So that's the first thing they did to try and put people off. The first actual virus was around about 1971. It was called the Creeper. It was developed to prove a point that these things could actually be done. And it didn't do any damage. All it did was it displayed a little sign on your screen saying, I'm the Creeper, catch me if you can. And it was followed quickly afterwards by the Reaper. And the whole purpose of the Reaper was to find the Creeper and delete it from the system that it infected. If we move forward to 1982, we see the emergence of the elk cloner virus. Now the elk cloner virus was written by a teenager as a joke to play on some of his friends. It was targeted specifically at Apple II computers, and what it was connected to a game. If you put an infected disk in your computer, it infected that computer there. He went around to all his friends' house to play that game, spreading it on his floppy disks and losing lots of friends in the process. I would imagine not a very fun joke. 1986, we see these two brothers from Pakistan. They've developed some medical software. They didn't want anybody to pirate their software, so they wrote a little virus called the Brain, which infected lots and lots of computers. Unfortunately, they left their name, their address and their phone number on there, and quickly they were overwhelmed by phone calls of people saying you've infected the computer, what are you going to do to try and fix it? In 1988, we see the famous Morris worm, and again the Morris worm was written by a gentleman, Robert Morris, and the whole purpose of it wasn't malicious. It was to try and highlight security vulnerabilities and weaknesses in systems and poor passwords and things like that. Unfortunately for young Robert Morris, his dad, Robert Morris Sr., worked for the NSA. I'm sure that was an interesting conversation around the dinner table that evening. And he was promptly arrested, and he was one of the first people to be charged for computer misuse in America in 1986. To be fair, he did break the internet for 2 or 3 days at the time, the internet of the time for 2 or 3 days, and he did also inspire the creation of the first computer emergency response team as well. So there was some positives that came out of that for him. In 1989, we see the very first ransomware. It was called AIDS, and again it was spread using floppy disks, and the disks on it said that put this in and we'll tell you the likelihood of you contracting AIDS or HIV, infected your computer with ransomware and asked for a $189 ransom to get your files decrypted. Unfortunately, the gentleman that wrote that wasn't very good at encryption. He was caught quite quickly afterwards as well. Around about the 80s and 90s, we also see the rise of nation states. Most of it was trying to steal IP. It was the Russians trying to catch up with the Americans and British around about how far ahead they were with computers. So the Russians trying to catch up with all of And also in the 90s we see the emergence of macro-enabled viruses, something that we still see to this day. In year 2000 we begin to see the emergence of social engineering with the I love you virus, which was spread by email. I've written you a lovely love letter. Please click on this attachment and we'll tell you how much I love you. That actually inspired the Pet Shop Boys. 2002, one of the 2002 albums, the email song was inspired by I love you. 10 Downing Street were hit by a virus in 2000 as well. They were hit by the Russian proverb virus, which spouted some fantastic proverbs, things like why leave till tomorrow what you can drink today. I'm sure Theresa May could probably do with a drink just now. Ironically enough, it hit the department that was in charge of giving out information about the Millennium Bug. I'm not sure how far they managed to spread the proverb virus, but probably further than the Millennium Bug ever spread. Right about the 2000s as well, we start to see the emergence of crime gangs. So we start to see people thinking they can make some money out of computer viruses and infecting people with malware. And things go from being loud and look how good I am and how smart I am, and things start to become a little bit more stealthy. The quieter they can be, the more money they can make. And you see the emergence of things like keyloggers and banking trojans, things that fly under the radar just a little bit more. In the 2000s as well, 2010, we saw the emergence of Stuxnet was discovered. But they reckon Stuxnet, which may or may not have been developed by the Americans and the Israelis, neither of them have admitted it, neither of them have denied it. But they reckon that Stuxnet had been developed since around about 2005, so that was the first sort of cyber warfare weapon, if you like, around about then as well. And then things start to get a little bit noisy again. As the criminals start to use blackmail and extortion, we start to see the rise of denial of service attacks. And we see the massive rise in ransomware, people encrypting all your files and asking for a ransom for it. And ransomware probably hit its peak around about the WannaCry, so May 2017 WannaCry attack, which hit the NHS, and then there was another attack, NotPetya, that came after that as well, but that was probably peak ransomware. And that kind of takes us up to where we are now. So what is it we're beginning to see at the moment, and what do you think we're going to see in the future as well, what's happening? Ransomware is not as popular as it used to be. It's still a thing, but what we're seeing is it's moving much more to enterprise. Rather than being a blanket attack targeting everybody and trying to get individuals to pay, it's a much more targeted attack nowadays, moving to enterprise. They're trying to get the ransomware on systems where they know that they'll be able to cause maximum damage. So if you take the Norsk Hydro, the big steel manufacturers who were hit with ransomware just a couple of weeks ago, the attackers knew that it would cause massive damage to their system, so that's why they were targeted in that specific attack. The greater potential damage they can do, the more return they're going to get. We're seeing things like the Riot ransomware, which specifically targets high value systems, so it's looking for systems where it knows it can cause lots of damage. They're hoping that because they're going to cause a lot of damage, that you'll pay the ransom quickly, you won't report it, and they'll be able to fly under the radar a little bit more. We're seeing it become more targeted because we're becoming better at defending against it. There's much better awareness as to what ransomware is and how to protect yourself. Consumers, so just the average person, they're mainly using their tablet or their mobile phone rather than desktop computers, which can be a little bit more difficult to hit with ransomware. Also, these things tend to automatically back up to the cloud. Why am I going to pay you £500 to decrypt my iPhone? I pay 79 pence a month to Apple to use the iCloud. I can just download all my pictures from there without any hassle at all. So these cloud backups are beginning to change the way that we actually do things as well. We're also seeing the move back to stealth. We're seeing the criminals move to quieter methods of trying to attack your computer. So we're seeing a massive rise in things like crypto mining, and so they're getting a piece of code, they're installing it into your computer, and it will go and try and mine some cryptocurrency. The chances are the user's never going to notice that their computer's infected. They might notice it's a little bit slower, their power bill might go up a little bit, but they're not going to know what's causing that, what the problem is. It gives the bad guys a quick return. and there's a low barrier to entry. For around about $30 on the dark web, you can buy some crypto mining software that you can then install into people's computers. You can infect the end user, or you can infect a website and have the people that visit that website do the crypto mining for you. Imagine we've got a big massive botnet, thousands and thousands of devices, IoT devices that get infected with crypto mining currency. Imagine that was put to use, how much money we would be able to make very, very quickly with little work for them. We're seeing a huge rise in supply chain attacks. So this is whereby, rather than compromising a company or a computer, we're going to compromise an actual piece of software. Okay. So if I can infect a bit of software, when you send an update out for that software, or you apply the update for that software, everybody that does that gets infected as well. Okay. We tend to trust things when it pops up on your computer saying this piece of software needs updated. We trust it, we click the update button. Software is often signed, so it will pass any antivirus or malware detection systems. It will get through onto your computer very easy. ASUS, just a couple of weeks ago, it was found that they were involved in a supply chain attack. So the ASUS, the laptop manufacturer, their updates had been infected and managed to infect hundreds of thousands of computers with malware there as well. So you can target lots of people at once by doing this, not just one or two different people. Think about all the different Chrome extension browsers that you've got. If I can infect one of those, everybody that uses that particular extension, they'll get infected with it as well. Lots of people use WordPress for their website and their content management. If I can infect a WordPress theme or a WordPress plugin, it's not just that one website that's going to be infected, it's going to be all the websites that use that particular plugin. Repositories, so things like GitHub, which is used to share code amongst people. If I can infect something in GitHub, I'll infect anybody that downloads that particular piece of code. In fact, GitHub at the beginning of March, they took down 73 accounts which hosted over 300 malicious apps that people were downloading and installing on their computers. We can do things like typo squatting, so we can write a module that looks very similar to a genuine one, and when you try and install it, if you make a spelling mistake, you're not going to notice until it's too late and you've already downloaded something that's got malware or some malicious code in there for you as well. And we can do things like form jacking, so we'll infect the plugin that hosts your Contact Us form. We'll start scraping for credit card details. When I say we, I mean the bad guy, it's not actually me. I'm ethical. But by doing this, by infecting the supply chain, you immensely increase your attack surface. You can hit and target a lot more people than you would do if you were just trying to send out a piece of malware and get individuals to install it. Form jacking that I spoke about is just infecting that website with some JavaScript that will scrape credit cards. Ask BA or Ticketmaster how bad things can get with form jacking. Capture all those credit card details. If I do it in a plugin or something, a third-party piece of code that you're using on your website, it's not just your website that gets infected. There could be hundreds of other websites as well that get infected. Move on to cloudy stuff. The cloud, which is massive, everybody's moving things to the cloud. It's becoming more and more important, and we use it more and more, and so we should, because it's helpful, it's handy, and it makes things a little bit easier for us. But we do need to remember that for the hackers, the cloud is the dream. Yeah, it's got everything in it. It's got a whole host of things that we can attack, and we're not quite at the stage where we're good at putting the proper security measures in there at the moment. I don't need to use an exploit on the cloud. All I need to do is find an unsecured AWS bucket. I need to find something that you've put on the cloud that you haven't configured properly, and I can attack that. American Express India, for example, they left a database unsecured, and there was hundreds of thousands of credit card details on there. I didn't need to do any hacking, I just needed to find that database and find what wasn't secured. There's tools out there that will let me search for exposed or unsecured Amazon S3 buckets that have got your information in it, or may have your information in it. So we need to think about how we secure the cloud a little bit better. Malware, actual malicious code. Traditionally, was known for doing one thing. So if you downloaded a piece of malware, it was either a keylogger, or it was a banking Trojan, or it was ransomware. It was one or the other. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing that the authors of these malware are beginning to work together a lot more. They're collaborating and they're creating hybrid malware. So when you download it, it might look like one thing, but it may well do something else as well. So you'll install the malware, it'll have a look around, it'll see how valuable that system is, what's on that system. If it looks like a good target, that's when it'll download the ransomware and hit you with ransomware. Okay. North Carolina Water Authority got hit by the Riot ransomware. And when they did the investigation afterwards, they discovered that actually that was the second stage. Okay, before the Riot ransomware actually hit, they'd been infected with other malware that was doing other things, stealing data, and then they got hit by the ransomware after that. So these guys are working together to create as much impact as they possibly can, to make as much profit as they can and share it amongst themselves. Phishing is still a thing, even in this day and age. If you go back to 2000 with the social engineering and the I love you letter, we're still getting lots of phishing emails. And we still get them because it works. Yeah? According to the IT Professional Security Report, 76% of organisations experienced a phishing attack in 2018. I don't know what the other 24% were doing, but they weren't looking properly, if you ask me. The attackers are doing things a little bit differently as well now. They vary the infrastructure that they're using. They'll use cloud, they'll use hosted infrastructures to try and hide in legitimate sites. They'll vary the length of the attack, so you might find that the phishing link or downloads are actually only active for 2 or 3 minutes after the emails are sent out, to try and keep under the radar so that their IP addresses and their email addresses don't get blacklisted and you can send something else out. So they're trying lots of different tactics to try and catch people out. I do need to talk to you about passwords. Passwords are really important, and they're not going to go away anytime soon. Yeah, passwords are not going to be replaced by anything for a while yet. But one weak password can result in compromising your whole organisation. If we think about it, there's somewhere in the region of 2.2 billion usernames and passwords that have been stolen and are out there on the internet, on the dark net for people to buy. And all I need to do is buy a list of usernames and passwords. Guaranteed people on that list have reused their passwords somewhere. And that's why we're starting to see the rise in credential stuffing attacks. So Dunkin' Donuts, Reddit, all these people have had a credential stuffing attack whereby I've just taken a big list of usernames and passwords and tried every single one of them to see how many accounts I can actually get into. Okay. Now, back in the day, in the olden days when I was a lad, the attackers would try and brute force your password. So I would try and guess your username, I would try and guess your password by trying every single combination of passwords that I could think of on your one account. But we now lock people out of their accounts if they get their password wrong 2 or 3 or 4 different times. So what I do now is I try and spray a password, and I get a list of commonly used passwords, and in your account I'll try password 123, and if that doesn't work I'll move on to your account and I'll try password 123. If that doesn't work, I'll move on to your account and try password 123, and eventually I'll find somebody that's used that bad password on your network, and I'm in and I can do whatever I like. Nation states are beginning to become a lot less subtle about what they do. The Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, all these different nations are accused of cyber attacks on a daily basis. If you have a little think about it, over in Venezuela they had a power cut recently and they seem to be falling out with a few different people as well. I'm not saying that's what's happened, but who knows. You look at things like the Winter Olympics held in South Korea last year. They were hit by a denial of service attack. Might have been a close neighbour to them just north of South Korea. It might have been somebody else. We've got more elections coming up, and again we're probably going to see interference in those from nation states with people trying to do things. We're seeing a lot of catfishing going on, so that is whereby a beautiful young lady makes contact with some NATO soldiers over social media, strikes up a relationship with them, and eventually those soldiers start to give out nation-state secrets. And you might think that doesn't happen, but they have all just got into trouble in the last couple of months for doing exactly that, and told that they need to be careful what they're doing on social media. So these guys are becoming more and more open about what they do. They're not trying to hide it anymore, they're not trying to blame other people. They don't admit it, but they don't deny it either. They're definitely doing it, and they're being a lot less subtle about it. We as businesses need to think about that, because we don't want to get caught in the crossfire of this. Okay, now just ask Maersk, who were caught in the Pecha not Pecha attack, which was targeted at the Ukraine. Probably came from somebody close to Ukraine that wants to move into Ukraine, if you know who I mean. Maersk got caught in the Pecha not Pecha attack. It cost them somewhere in the region of $300 million. Okay? They weren't the target, they just got caught up in something that a nation state was doing something else. So we need to think about these things. I'm nearly finished. I said I wouldn't be long, so here we go. In conclusion, if you like, the more we know, the better we can prepare. We need to know what the bad guys are doing. We need to think about that, and we need to think about how we can defend from that. The attackers are still living off the land, and by that I mean they're not creating new exploits, they're not creating 0 days, they're using vulnerabilities against us that they know that exist, that have already been patched. In 2018, out of the top 10 most common exploits, 8 of them were targeted at Windows, and all 10 of them had patches that were available, and if you applied those patches and those updates, people would have been hit by these exploits. Infection rates correlate to human development and development factors and technology readiness, and by that I mean the more we make people aware of what's happening, the more prepared we are, the easier it is for us to defend ourselves. Countries like Ethiopia, who aren't quite as technologically advanced, they don't have the same infrastructure that we've got, they get hit a lot more than we do, and it has a bigger impact on them. And if you take that down to a business level, the more prepared we are and the better infrastructure that we've got, the more protected we are. And tactics will always change and they will always adapt. The bad guys will do different things, but the reason that they do that is because we become better at defending ourselves. They have to change their tactics because we stop them in their tracks. We make them think, and we are making them work harder to get the same return that they were before. We need to use trusted sources. If you're going to download a bit of code from somewhere else, or you're going to use a third-party piece of software, make sure that it's been security checked. Make sure you know that it does what it's supposed to do and it's not doing other things. And we need to check our configuration, particularly up on the cloud, and even down to user level. We need to make sure that we're using the right configuration. We need to make sure that users have got the right access controls. We're not letting everybody run with admin access so that they can do things by mistake. We need to make sure we're reining them in and holding them in place. And just be aware, and if you're suspicious about something, we need to act on it, we need to report it, we need to investigate it to see if something has happened. And we need to train our staff. We need to speak to our staff and let them know what the threats are, how they can help us defend ourselves better. And we need to be consistent in this. We need to be consistent with everybody across the board. The Vice President and CISO of Raytheon, he said that inconsistency is the biggest threat that we have to an organisation. There's always groups inside a company that think what they do is too important or too different, and they will push for an exception. In 2019, we need to help people understand that exceptions create risk. And if we create an exception for them, we're creating a risk for the whole organisation. So we need to have a little bit of thinking like that. That's me finished. If anybody has any questions.